I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Race Gippsland National Science Week event, which is a horticulture careers panel. The wonderful thing about going virtual is we've been able to open up these Race Gippsland activities to everyone all over Australia. So we've got people joining us from interstate. I'm meeting with you today from the lands of the Kulin Nation, and our panelists are meeting with us from the lands of the Gunai-Kurnai people. And so I just wish to acknowledge the Kulin people and the Gunai-Kurnai people as traditional owners. Excuse me. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and Aboriginal elders at other communities who may be here today. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. So if you have a question at home, and we do really encourage questions, you can ask those anonymously by clicking on the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. If you want to sort of post it for everyone to see, feel free to pop it in the chat section at the bottom of your screen. Pop your school name in there too in the chat screen so we can, mention you as we get going and get discussing with our panelists. So we might jump into it. So what is horticulture? So I was trying to find a really neat definition, and basically horticulture is just all about growing plants. And in Australia, our horticulture industry consists of all sorts of different things. And this is why I actually love this industry, because it's so diverse. So we've got vegetables, we've got fruits, we've got flowers, we've got nuts, we've got turf, and we've got those nursery plants. So a full range of different things. And I thought I'd also touch on why horticulture is so important. Obviously, we need vegetables, fruit and nuts for a healthy, balanced diet. But other than plants are really good for our well-being. So there was actually a study done at the University of Technology, Sydney last year, which found that the effects of indoor plants on occupants' mood states and feelings of well-being brought a 37% reduction in anxiety. It reduced depression and those other negative mood states. Having a medium-sized indoor plant can improve your air quality by about 25%. So plants are really, really important. The other thing I think about why, in particular, Australian horticulture is really important is because we can be really proud of the high standards our industry have set for sustainability and providing safe food throughout the supply chain. So Australia definitely has established a reputation for clean, green produce. And that's something we can be really proud of. It means that we can share what we learn through the science of horticulture with other horticulturists around the world. And we do a lot of extension into Southeast Asia, working with developing nations. And that's, certainly something we can be really proud of and why our industry is so important. So it is Science Week, and I thought I'd touch on that horticulture is absolutely an industry that's underpinned by science from right at the very beginning, when we're looking at our natural resources and looking after our water and our land. We'll probably talk a little bit about carbon capture in our soils and biodiversity today as well. We then use science for our plant breeding to select plants, plant health, and something called integrated pest management, which I'm really keen to hear more about. I find it really fascinating. Then onto the production side of things, so planting, growing, harvesting, we're continually using science to try and look at ways of improving those kind of processes. Post-production, when we're looking at packing, processing and manufacturing, we're looking at food science. We're also looking at using a lot of technology there, although technology is peppered throughout the supply chain. On the marketing side of things, we're looking at social science. And then, of course, our distribution and export. So our transport, logistics, food supply chains, there's a lot of science involved there. Excellent. So with that little intro done and dusted, we might get started today. So we've got three fantastic panelists for you to meet. Our first panelist, Bonnie Dawson, is the Regional Development Officer and Extension Officer at VegNet. Bon Manley is a flower farmer and her business is known as Bon in the Garden. if you got our little handout earlier in the week, you should have found a link to Bon's Instagram. There's some wonderful pictures there. And we've got Adam Schreur, who is a celery leek and baby leaf greens grower. All our panelists are based in Gippsland. Adam is actually the largest supplier of celery for around the nation. Is that right, Adam?
Yes, one of the largest, if not the largest, yes.
Yeah, which I love my celery smothered in peanut butter, but yeah, it's wonderful produce there. So without further ado, I might kick it over to Bonnie first. Bonnie, tell us a little bit about your job, what your title is, what your role and responsibilities are.
Sure, thanks, Nicole. So as Nicole said, I am the RDO, the Regional Development Officer for a project called VegNet. Now, there are 10 of us across the country in the vegetable growing regions of Australia. Our roles are funded by what's called a body called Hort Innovation, and the money that Hort Innovation looks after is comes from the levies that each producer pays. So it's sort of like an extra tax that every producer has to pay to a research and development body called Hort Innovation. So Hort Innovation then invests that money in a whole lot of different projects that it is designed for the development of and research for the industry. So my role is to then extend that research and development out to the growers. That's the core of it. And the way in which I do that is a whole raft of different ways, but it's, based on, I just had a call coming through, but ended that now.
Okay.
It's based on, to work out the best way in which I do that is by working with the growers and with the different organisations that are doing that research and development, and bringing people together or just talking to them individually, sending out sort of resources like fact sheets and so forth. But what really underpins my role is getting to know people, how they best learn, and what their opportunities are within their business for development.
Yeah, you touched on a few really interesting things there. And I was looking up VegNet and Hort Innovation, and I actually saw you guys have funded over 235 research and development programs over the last 10 years. And that idea too that growers are funding the research. So it says to me that horticulture is an industry that is really invested in science and using science to improve things. Now, Bonnie, you sent through a couple of photos to me earlier this week, so we might bring some of those up. And I'd be keen to know a little bit about some of the projects you are working to extend at the moment.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, so this one, so I might step back just a moment and with explain give a quick overview before I go into the specific photos. So my work from getting to know the growers and identifying what the sort of priorities are for growers across the region, across Gippsland, which is quite a large area. And there's some really big growers, and then there's a whole lot of smaller growers as well. So we've identified a few different areas which cover biosecurity, which I'll go into a bit, protection of waterways surrounding these properties, and workforce development. So that's less scientific, more about people. And then ag-tech, so the technology side of things and how that can help develop the industry. So these photos here are actually at Adam's place. So this was part of a piece that we're working on about protecting the waterways surrounding growers. Now, I sort of tried to find some photos that weren't at Adam's place just because I didn't want to double up on things. But this was a farm walk that I organised at Adam's place because he's done an amazing job down at his farm in designing the property to minimise runoff from the production system into the local environment. And that is, we're trying to encourage those kind of design elements and different practices in the system to look after the surrounding environment. So there's this, and then there's some other projects we're working on, which work towards that kind of greater objective. Now these photos here are down in a paddock in Lindenow, which is where I am now. And this is part of a biosecurity piece. So biosecurity is about preventing or minimising, protecting properties from foreign pests, disease and weeds. So that might be pests, disease and weeds which are classed as exotic, so they're not even in the country at this stage. Australia being the continent that it is quite is quite protected from some pests, disease and weeds that are in other areas of the world. Or it might be about not bringing a disease that's on someone else's farm to your farm, because that obviously may cause quite significant damage to the crop that you're growing. Now, these photos here were part of this yellow sticky trap is something that's used quite a lot throughout horticulture to capture flying insects that then might. So this project was about then testing aphids that would be caught on this sticky trap that for a virus that is found in certain crops. But the work that I do, that was one very small element of some broader biosecurity stuff, which is about making sure the region is aware of what threats might be around. So there's some things over the last year that have only just been found detected in the area, such as fall armyworm, and something else called serpentine leaf miner. So I'm next week running some workshops about those, and it's about broader prevention practices. So how do properties protect themselves from those threats, as well as anything else that might come into the region.
Yeah, your job sounds so cool, Bonnie. And I think what I love about it is it's looking at that science part of it, but then that human side of trying to encourage practice change and helping people adopt new practices. Taking it right back to when you were in high school, like some of our audience members, what were your favourite subjects at school?
It's interesting reflecting on it, because like you said, Nick, it's sort of scientific, but then it's really about people as well. And I love my job because I'm not a technical expert at any of this. Back at high school, I did enjoy science, but I played a lot of music, and I ended up doing other stuff. Like I did study biology through to year 12, but that was the only science subject I ended up following through high school. And then I went to university and did more sort of people stuff, social sciences. But yeah, I suppose I've always been fascinated in like the living world. And, whether I thought that what I wanted to work in was more of the health stuff, hence why I followed in the health sector, hence why I followed biology, and I did health and human development at school, as well as those more arty subjects.
Yeah. I always find it interesting the number of people I come across in agriculture who did enjoy those arty subjects. On a dairy panel earlier this week, we had that too. But I think sometimes what those kind of, you learn in music, you learn about picking out patterns, you learn about working as a team, in that, playing in your orchestra or your school band or whatever. Were there things that you learnt by doing those sort of different subjects that you use in your daily job? Yeah. It's really interesting that you bring that up. I love thinking about, like, in my work, like I said, it's sort of more about people in a sense. And I find that it's a bit about, like, I don't know if this is going to come across how I want it to, but it's about orchestrating people, like creating connections. So, and sometimes it's a bit of a dance. Like sometimes you can't someone might not be ready to meet the right person to really engage in the conversation. So you kind of have a few conversations with this person and a few more with this person, and then eventually you bring them together. And so
it's, for me, it's a bit about feeling my way with people, to know how to best create relationships between them or between subject matter.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Now, we've talked a lot about what you love about your job. I'm going to kick you a curly question. What's something that you don't like or that you find challenging, or that's not a great part of your job?
Yeah. I think, like I said, I'm not a technical expert in any of it. So some of it I find sometimes I find that quite overwhelming, particularly in the way that my role is structured at the moment. I work for Food and Fibre Gippsland, and we all work from home even before coronavirus. So I've sometimes, felt a bit overwhelmed and like, oh, I don't know enough to be, I don't quite feel experienced or confident enough for my job. But it's an amazing, put the positive with the negative, like it's an amazing industry to work in because everyone's so supportive. And I think it's about finding, I don't need to be the expert necessarily. And so it's about finding those people to support, the right people for the conversation or for the subject matter. And by being honest about that, I've been so fortunate to be connected with a whole lot of other people in the industry. Nearly everything that I feel a bit challenged by, there's someone I can ask for advice or support from.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. We might skip over to Bon now. So Bon, our flower farmer. Now, this year's Science Week theme is food different by design. And so when I've seen your produce, I've never really thought about flowers as food much before. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your job and what you do.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Bronwyn Manley of Bon, and I own Bon in the Garden, which is a boutique edible flower farm. We're based in central Gippsland. So basically, I grow edible flowers. We've got an example here of a beautiful little viola. We dry them, and then we create a long shelf life product, which is, I'll open it up for you guys. And then what we do is chefs, and look how tiny it is there in comparison to the two.
Yeah.
So basically, we grow garnishes. So people use our products from everything from drinks, from cocktails, mocktails. So in bars to restaurants use them as garnishes. And then at home, people are using them to decorate their own products as well. So if you think of hundreds and thousands sprinkles, for example, ours is a natural alternative to that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Can you tell me a bit about what your role in the business is, and what, like, this is always hard when I talk to someone in agriculture, because I often like to ask what a typical day looks like for you, but I know that no 2 days is the same. But if you could try and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, that's fine. So for me, because it's a small business, I only have a handful of staff. I am everywhere from the start to the end. So I am there planting or shoveling poo into the garden beds to help get them prepared for sowing seeds, to then out at the end hustling to sell my product as well. So we cover everything from staff management to planning for the day, picking what we're going to grow, researching, to processing the product right through to the end. So yeah. I'm there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And thinking about, how long have you had Bon in the Garden for?
So our business has been for 2 years. We started out as a fresh flower farm. So I would sell our flowers to restaurants, which we were very limited by, because of, not limited in the sense that I had plenty of sales in our local area, but we were limited by distance to get to Melbourne. But we always were working towards becoming a dried sprinkle flower farm, because it's a longer shelf life product, and it means we post Australia wide now. So when COVID hit last year, we made the leap of faith, because of all our beautiful clients in the restaurants were shutting their doors. We decided we were going to make the leap of faith as well and become a dried flower farm. So basically a year we've been running dried sprinkles flat out.
That's amazing. And we've got a lovely picture of your family up here. So do you live on your farm, Bon? Or?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And my work's So the garden is basically 2 acres, and then my workspace, we converted my laundry into my workspace. So it's filled with dryers and everything else. And I now do my laundry in another room.
I think you touch on something there too, which I really love about horticulture, because I've come from a broadacre cropping background. I often think of farms having to be like these huge pieces of land, but you're able to build a business on 2 acres. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so our property is 10 acres, but we've converted. So we use permaculture practices, meaning we don't use any herbicides and insecticides or anything like that. That was our decision that we made, that we wanted to grow naturally. It does mean I have some extra work crew, including Indian runner ducks. I have 12 of those helping me out with pest control. I have chickens and I have guinea fowl, because the first year we had a grasshopper plague, and basically the ground was moving and with grasshoppers going everywhere. So the guinea fowl came in to help with that. So we use different practices. And it did mean, I'll be honest, and I hope I don't upset anybody by saying this, but the first year was really tough. So at night time, when grasshoppers were slower, we were out there. It made me feel better. I'm sure I wasn't making a huge difference, but we were out there collecting grasshoppers and getting rid of them as well. So when it's a smaller farm, you're involved in every aspect, and that's great. Like, you've got to choose that way of life. If that's the way you want to go, you've got to get into it and give it a good crack. So
yeah. So thinking about when you were back in high school, like our audience members, what kind of subjects did you study, or what did you enjoy?
So you will laugh. The thought of getting my hands dirty just used to horrify me. I was all about marketing, economics, management, and all that kind of stuff, but that's ended up being a really great part of the business. I was always passionate about gardening. I just didn't understand it well enough, and my partner has grown up gardening, and I've learnt, and it's become quite a passion. And the marketing, management, and all that has been how we have succeeded, and communication skills and everything else. So
yeah. So you're drawing on a full range of skill sets in your small business there. What other kind of training have you done to kind of learn more about the flower farming industry?
My degree was in business management, so that has helped us out with that and understanding. But we have done as much training and knowledge that we've sort of gained along the way. It's been a very steep learning curve for us, and we've had to start from scratch. We came from suburbia, so I had a beautiful garden on a typical standard block, and then to upscale it has been a really great learning curve, but it's something that I would never not do again. It's been a great thing. So if you're passionate about it, give it a crack. So
yeah, that's so cool. Now, what don't you like about your job, or what do you find challenging about it?
The weeding, because it's our choice and we've made that decision. It means that there's a lot of hands-on weeding and doing jobs the harder way, but we're happy with that decision, and we've decided to keep the standards that we want, even though some days we do contemplate other options. It makes us feel better that we're keeping to what we wanted to do as a business. So it's meant that it's taken a bit longer to find options, but we've done the research and found better packaging, for example, for our products and all that kind of stuff. The other thing is stress that can come with a small business. I don't think I would be a responsible person unless I explain to everyone that owning a small business can be very stressful, but as long as you look after your mental and physical well-being, because you're the most important person in a small business, if you fall apart, everything can fall apart. So looking after your stress and mental well-being is important.
Yeah, awesome. We do have some questions coming through at the moment, so I just want to let people know I can see them coming through, but what I might do is I do want to introduce our last panelist before skipping back to them, if that's okay. So we might bring up Adam now. So Adam, you're a different scale of farmer to Bon. How big are your farms?
Yes, so we have properties spread from Gippsland right through to Cranbourne area. Basically, we have 1,400 acres here in Gippsland and still running on about 350 in the Cranbourne area.
Yeah, awesome. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your job and what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, so we grow celery leeks, baby spinach and rocket. We send them right around Australia to all the major supermarkets like Coles and Woolworths and Aldi, as well as all the wholesale markets through Australia. So they go to the fruit shops and the independent IGA supermarkets and places like that, as well as we export to 3 or 4 different countries around the world, Malaysia, Singapore, Dubai, places like that. And my day really consists of, I start at daylight pretty much every day, whether that be 7 o'clock in the winter time or 5:30 in the summer. And I meet all my staff. First thing, we go over what needs to be harvested for the day. I point out the areas that they need to harvest from and any pitfalls they might come across during the day. I spend the day before basically planning the harvest and how much crop to harvest for that day. I work closely with the sales team and the sales orders and whether we want smaller type bunches of celery or bigger ones or medium or large leeks. And so that all determines where the crops are going to be harvested from and which harvesters go where. So that's most of my days is really around planning and organising staff pretty much.
Yeah. So you employ a number of people. Tell me about some of the different roles and jobs that you have on your farm, Adam.
So that's probably the thing I like the most about our industry is diversity of jobs. So we can, as Bon said, be out shoveling the manure onto the crops one day or picking celery out of the ground or driving heavy machinery or sitting at a laptop planning the next day's harvest or planning our plantings for the following season. We also use some drone technology as well as we have some little robots that run around the field measuring plants and plant growth and where the weeds are. And I also use all of that data and interpret that data to know where the bigger parts of the crop are and where they're doing a little bit better or where they might need some more fertiliser.
Jamie, we might just skip forward a couple of slides. I think Adam has a video there. So tell us a bit about what is this, Adam? What are we looking at here?
So that's an autonomous robot that we've had on farm for probably about 8 months now. It's fairly new technology, but it all works on GPS and it knows the farm and it knows where it's going by itself. So it runs up and down every row. It covers, can cover up to sort of 8 hectares a day, and it actually films and takes a photo of every single plant that it goes over and measures the size of those plants. It also records if there's any weeds in the field and where the weeds are. It actually also has an arm on it that comes down and it will chip weeds out by itself as it goes along. It identifies the weed from a celery plant and the little arm chips the weed out. But it's still in the setup phase. So the plan would be eventually to have quite a few of these running around the farm. And I can almost sit at a desk and it'll tell me this area has got, a certain amount of weeds, so it may need some attention or send some people out there to pick the weeds, or it'll tell me that this row of celery is behind the rest. It doesn't seem to be growing at the rate it should be growing. So I can walk out there and have a look. So it's really just another set of eyes. Also looking for it to identify pest insects and things like that are in the crop. So it can alert me as to any issues that may come up or any disease in the plants.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it being a very valuable tool for us.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Now, you mentioned your pests there. Now, you do something that's called integrated pest management. So not quite at the permaculture end that Bon does with it. I love Bon's pest management strategies too. So we'll skip back to you in a second, Bon. But Adam, tell me about integrated pest management, because I'd never really thought about the fact that, like, while there's insects like the grasshoppers in Bon's garden who we don't want, there are also some good ones. Is that right?
That's right. And it's for us, it's about knowing what are the good insects or the beneficials or the predators, we call them, and which ones are the pests, and really knowing which ones are doing the damage to your crops and which ones are not. So if we walk out there basically with a leaf blower in reverse, and we have a little stocking on the end of it, and we'll walk through the crop and just physically suck the insects out of all the plants with a vacuum. We tip all the insects into a big white tray, and I'll actually sit there and count them, and count if we have, say, 10 aphids, but there's 10 ladybirds in there. I know that we're not going to have an issue. We don't need to spray any chemicals or anything like that, because the beneficial insects are going to eat up any pest insects. And it's really just about knowing what's in there and knowing how to control them, maybe keeping weeds down around the place that are hosts to some of the bad insects. But we also will pre-plant some crop before our cash crop, so to speak. So it'll be a sacrificial crop that we'll plant ahead of time and let the insects start attacking it, because you need the pest insects there for the good ones to come, because they need food. So we grow a few sacrificial crops to build up our beneficial insect populations, and then once they've sort of balanced each other out, then we can start growing our cash crops around it, and without using any insecticides.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. And I guess that's what I really love about science in horticulture, is that it all seems geared towards just improving the system, making sure like that we've got that biodiversity there, and really, having that sustainability piece going forward. Adam, how long have you been in horticulture for, out of curiosity?
Well, it was a family business, so all my life, but ever since I left school, when I finished school, I went and did an apprenticeship. It was a farm trades apprenticeship back then. It doesn't really exist now, but yeah, I did that for 4 years, and then started on the farm, the family farm, and managed one of the properties for about 10 or 15 years, and then bought out the family business about 8-9 years ago with one of my cousins, and we now own it and run it all ourselves.
Yeah. So how do you stay up to date on the cutting edge science then? Is that where sort of Bonnie comes into play?
Yes. One of the ways I follow every, so the VegNet programs put out a lot of, like next week, there's a farm pest and disease workshop with along with biosecurity. So I attend a lot of those sort of things, as well as different short courses, whether it be nutrition, to learn about nutrition and the interactions between the different elements in the soil, how we can capture carbon in the soil, how we can build up our carbon levels by growing cover crops, just learning about any new changes in climate science. So I'm always on the lookout to read anything that comes up, or do any extra courses that are out there, just to keep myself on top of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that's something that excites me about horticulture too, is that you guys really are part of the solution when it comes to us tackling climate change, and that carbon capture sounds fascinating. Over your time in industry, Adam, because you have grown up around horticulture, have you seen it change a lot?
Hugely. When I started on the farm, we used to spray for insects. We had a calendar spray, we used to call it. So every week without fail, there'd be this poisonous chemical that would go on that would absolutely kill everything in the whole place. And it actually got to a point where some of those insects became resistant and to the chemicals and wouldn't die anymore. So we just always look at ways to do things better now and less harmful to the environment. We know a lot more than we did 50 years ago or 60 years ago in the farming game, and it's all about keeping the environment, leaving it in a better way than we found it, I think, and using insects, not poisons, to control our insects, growing better quality products that's more nutritious and better to eat.
Yeah, that's fantastic. With that, we might skip back to Bon, because I did have a question here for you that kind of ties in with what Adam's discussing, and that is, how have you used your resources around you, like ducks and bees, to help you with what you do?
So I call them a part of the team, just because everyone's helping out, and they talk back to me, so that's no different to human employees. So our ducks are in there for the slugs and snails. Because we grow seasonally, we only grow what's best for the current time. So for example, now in winter, slug and snails will be living their best life because there's water around and moisture. And I also grow violas, and they love eating those. So basically, for example, ducks, I get the guys in and they come in each day when I'm in the actual growing area, and they'll go through all the plants, and along the sides of our beds, we've got raised garden beds, and they will go along down the sides through the pathways and get all the little bugs and creepy crawlies that we don't want eating the plants at night time. The bees, we wanted them because there's not many hives out in our area, and we thought it'd be a great aspect to add to the farm, plus we get the benefit of some honey as well. They also help with pollinating for our veggies that we grow over winter and summer, which is great. I must admit, I've had to learn that bees will mostly get all their food from surrounding natives, not necessarily our farm, but that's okay. The chickens, they're just a favourite, and I just love them, but they do help out as well. They go through the gardens, but they don't normally do too much damage in regards to lettuces and things like that for us. They'll just more pick out little slaters and things. And the guinea fowl are extreme grasshopper attack force, and they're great. They'll just go through the garden beds as well. So once our gardens get up to a certain height where we'll be picking in the next month, they're not allowed on the garden beds. I don't know how I've trained them, but I have. They get chuffed off the garden beds that have got flowers, and then they just stick to the paths. So basically it's, I don't know the answer, but I just have them into pest control and management like that. So.
Yeah, no, it sounds wonderful. And I love having both you and Adam on, because I think it just highlights how you can have different systems that are both really fantastic best practice,
yep.
And that there is room for all sorts of different approaches in horticulture. I've got another comment here from Nicole Curry, one of our teachers, who said, I can see the possibilities for drying wildflowers collected from our paddocks in our area. And that might lead us into another question another attendee has, which is, Bon, how many types of flowers do you grow?
So I just saw that question. I did a quick checklist at the moment because it changes each season. At the moment, I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 9 different varieties of flowers growing for edibles. And that will change through completely different to summer. Summer is our much bigger time of the year because you've just got more variety. And we dry whole flowers as well as petals. So in regards to the wildflowers in the paddock, how beautiful. I would definitely recommend, if you're going to use them for eating, you need to research to make sure that they're not going to poison you, because plenty of flowers can make you very sick. If you're going to dry them for your vase, hot tip, basically grab long stems, tie them upside down, and then hang them up to dry naturally with the air. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now I did want to check back in with Bonnie, if that's okay. What have you had to learn to succeed in your job? So I'm just curious, you mentioned you're working a lot with people. So what are some of those key skills that you've had to develop to be good at your job?
Yeah, it probably goes back to what I said earlier, Nick, about knowing who else is in the industry or beyond the industry too that can be supportive, and who to learn from. As well as obvious, research skills. Like I said, I'm not the most knowledgeable on any particular topic, but I'm constantly reading, and researching what's been put out there, particularly from that Hort Innovation kind of levy-funded projects.
Yeah, so that continuous learning and building those relationships and those networks has been really important to you being able to succeed in your job.
Yeah, knowing what sort of everyone's, whether it's an individual or organisation, what their roles are in the system, so to speak, whether it's vegetable industry specifically or more broadly, what the government, the different departments' roles are in natural resource management, as an example.
Yeah, awesome. Adam, what are some of the skills you've had to learn to be really good at your job?
For myself, it's probably more been people management skills. I've done a few leadership courses and just things to help me manage people, and better skills at doing it in the correct way, and treating people how they, as I would like to be treated myself. And it's just something that takes a long time. We have 180 staff, so I deal with a lot of different people and a lot of different personalities, and that's probably one of the biggest things for me.
Yeah, lovely. And then with your staff that you're hiring, what are some of the skills that you'd love to see our young people developing to really thrive in a career in horticulture?
Probably similar, leadership and knowing, being decisive and knowing what they're doing in their roles, knowing their roles well, and researching what they're doing before they get in of a day or the day before, preparing themselves, being well prepared for whatever they're doing that next day, whether it be harvesting celery out of the ground or analysing soil tests and making up a fertiliser program. I think it's all about preparation and being prepared beforehand.
Yeah, fantastic. And Bon, what about you? Because you do have some young people working in your organisation. What are some of the skills they've had to cultivate to be good at their jobs on your farm?
I make sure that I employ people that have a really good give it a go attitude, and also people that are motivated. It's really important to take all the information in that you can be given from each employer that you have in your work time, but also show initiative. Rock up 10 minutes early if that's what's required or something like that, and be there and be on your game. Also be resilient. It's hard work in horticulture, but it's really rewarding as well. So it's an amazing career path to have. But yeah, give it your best and always show up full on.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely reminder that while it's really important we apply ourselves at school and learn a lot of knowledge and technical skills, it sounds like those soft skills and those employability skills, developing those attitudes and like having those goals to be really good at what you're doing are just as important. Would that be fair to say?
Very much so.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, we do have a few more questions coming in here. So, Adam, there's lots of jobs on your farm. Now, you've touched on a few of the different types of jobs. Has technology changed those jobs on your farm much? What skills do you think might be needed for a future career in horticulture?
Technology's changed turned our whole business around, really. We've gone from nearly everything being manual now to using tractors steering and driving themselves in a straight line. So it's understanding GPS systems and automatic auto steer. We're now using, water jet technology to cut our vegetables. So it's cut with high pressure water. We're now looking into cameras that will actually look at the vegetables and move the water jet around so they're cut in the precise position that they need to be cut at. There's just so many different things now. Weighheads that need to be constantly, adjusted and calibrated so they're weighing the correct amounts of celery out. That we do little pre-packs of celery, so it's most of it's automated, goes through a automatic line, automatic weighheads, flow wrappers. So all of the machinery and technology side of it. We're also looking at robots that will pick and pack things as well. So I can see the future being a bit more like a car manufacturing plant where it's automated and there's a lot of robots in lines, and so it's going to require a lot of computer skills, engineering skills, totally different to the skills that I grew up needing when I started. But I think they'll still always be required, but it's just a much more broader knowledge and some specialist areas in programming and engineering.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. What we might do too, we've got one question coming in here saying, oh, I love this. This is all super interesting. I'm interested in a career in horticulture. How do I get work experiences, or what courses can I do now? I'm going to kick this over to Bonnie first, because you were first interested in health and then you've managed to get into horticulture. What kind of, how did you get into it? Like if you know a young person trying to get work experience, what could they do?
So how, I suppose the industry is like most growers all constantly have positions open, as it is such a an industry so reliant on people. While Adam's talking about technology, most positions still are individual people, and some growers have upwards of 50 people employed to pick produce. How I got into it, I kind of fell into it. I studied health promotion and international development, and I worked in health promotion and kind of ended up in healthy eating initiatives, and then decided I was interested in agriculture from there. And the position was advertised in the vegetable industry. It was a support role at the time. So I applied because I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, and was offered the job. But I suppose because it is so reliant on people, and there's a constant need for more people, and every grower is really supportive of any enthusiastic young person entering the workforce. So I reckon my recommendation would be just to contact any growers that you know in your area and ask them directly if they've got any work, or what they would suggest, what type of openings they have, whether they can offer you work experience. Yeah. Adam might have something more specific to say about that.
Yeah, we'll skip over to Adam. Yeah.
I'd agree with Bonnie. Certainly direct contact with the grower or any farms in your area that you would think might be an interesting place to go and work. We're always more than happy to accommodate younger people that want to get into our industry. So saying that, I think science, which is sort of why we're here, that's a real key for us these days. If someone would come to us with a degree in microbiology or food science or agronomy, any of those sort of things, they're so sought after these days in our industry. And you don't have to stay along that path. They're just skills you can have in the background, and still my favourite thing is still getting on driving trucks and tractors and motorbikes and just getting on everything around the farm, operating harvesters. But I still love getting into the nitty-gritty, designing fertiliser programs and growing the plants and breeding plants and learning how to grow plants in different types of soil and different conditions. So yeah, love to have anyone that's really interested in all of those sort of things.
Yeah. Bon, what's your tips for work experience if someone was seeking work experience or wanting to kind of upskill themselves to pursue a career in horticulture?
I agree. Being proactive and approaching growers is a really smart way to do it. But not only that, once you have a job, keep educating yourself. So if there's courses that might interest you, might be beekeeping, for example, go do a course out of your work time as well and educate yourself as much as possible in things that interest you, because you never know how they'll be able to be used later on. So it might not be immediate straight away, and you might be thinking, oh, not more schoolwork, but you'll find that subjects that interest you will be easier to study and therefore will be easier to learn. So yeah, I can't recommend keeping up with educating yourself throughout your career path as well.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to bring up, I've got a slide there, Jamie. I'm just going to skip to it with some tips of how people might want to learn more. So the first place for teachers out there who are tuning in today, for Race Gippsland, we have developed some learning modules that you can incorporate into the classroom. We've got one on traceability of Gippsland produce, which looks at the supply chain and the data used to move food safely through those supply chains. We've also got a module looking at potatoes and food waste. You can also check out different careers at Career Harvest. TAFE have some really good certificates in horticulture that you can look at pursuing, and like Bon said, you may even be able to integrate those into your senior studies or pursue those outside of school. Contact your local industry groups. So for us here in Gippsland, Food and Fibre Gippsland do have a link to a Jobs Victoria initiative where job seekers can register to their interest to pursue work. I mean, and the great thing about horticulture is it lines up perfectly with school holidays. And there certainly is a lot of benefit from learning the industry from the ground up, getting out there, being part of the picking crews or the packing crews. And with that in mind, for our friends who've tuned in from around Australia, you can also look for jobs there on Harvest Trail. So there is a national initiative. Horticulture is in every state. So yeah, it absolutely is a great entry point for people wanting to learn more about agriculture. Now, we're going to skip back to our panel for just some final wrap-up comments. And I'm really curious, what is some advice that you wish someone had told you when you were at school about pursuing career or your career or the world of work? You know, what final comments can you impart on our audience today? I might start with Adam. Do you want to go?
Yes. Look, I just think it's work hard, do what you love, and find something that you really like doing, work hard at it, and you'll be successful no matter what. If you work hard and love what you do, as I do, you don't work. It's not like work. It's just good fun, and yeah, stick at it.
Yeah, I agree. I think pursuing whatever your interest is, and I think that's the wonderful thing about horticulture is there's all sorts of ways to bring your interest into that industry. Bon, what's some of your final career advice that you'd like to have for
My things that I jotted down was keep your mind open to different opportunities. Just because you start out in one career path doesn't mean that it's necessarily your destiny. So you just never know what's around the corner. So always taking all the opportunities. I also said learn as much information as you can from each of your employers. You just never know what tricks of the trade that will help you later on if you end up owning your own business or end up in management for another business. And the best advice I've ever been given is to do resilience, and that is if one door closes, another one will open. So just keep enjoying the process and don't stress too much about it.
Yeah, navigating a career can be tricky, so it doesn't always go to plan. And I think, yeah, that keeping that mind open to see the opportunity is a really important piece of advice. Thanks, Bon.
No worries.
And Bonnie, what sort of career advice do you have for students at home?
Yeah, totally echo what both Bon and Adam said. I think sort of in my personal career journey so far, keeping open-minded. Like I really enjoyed my work in health promotion, but life happened. There are a few things that happened in my life, and I sort of started to realize that my interests, that I was also really interested in agriculture. So it was simply, it wasn't because a door closed or because I was not enjoying my previous work. It was just keeping open-minded and wanting that lifelong learning experience that led me to where I am now. And yeah, I think, maybe 40 years ago, there were some really defined job roles that, there was a select list of what people generally did for work. Now, there are so many opportunities out there that you don't even know about. Like I grew up in Gippsland and I had no idea about the horticulture industry, really. And yeah, no idea of the breadth of these business, depth of these businesses and the breadth of the roles within them. So yeah, I just kind of followed my nose and wound up here, and love it. And yeah, it was from being open-minded and keen to continue learning throughout my life. I think that got me here so far.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think from all our panelists, Adam talking about, building your interest in your passion, Bon staying open to experience, and Bonnie, you like exploring, different options out there. I know the pandemic has meant we'll have some school leavers who can't pursue their gap year overseas, but there is a wonderful opportunity to really have an adventure in horticulture, I think, closer to home. Agricultural workers are essential workers. If you're thinking about wanting to travel the country, there will be jobs in horticulture everywhere you go. And it might be a really good opportunity to go try out some different work, develop some of those transferable skills, build that work ethic, learn something new about yourself that you can carry into any sort of job you're going to pursue in the future. But yeah, thank you, Adam, Bon and Bonnie, for coming along to the careers panel today. And thank you to our audience members for asking all those wonderful questions. We hope you got a lot out of today's talk. If you do have further questions, please just shoot them through to the Race Gippsland team. We'll get in touch with our panelists. But yeah, thanks for being here today, guys. And I'll catch you around the traps.